The Galactic Council thought they had humanity cornered. They believed that their cruel experiments on the human soldiers would break their spirits, crush any hopes of resistance, and demonstrate the absolute power of their empire. But they were wrong. Earth had a warning for them, one they never expected. The message came in the dead of night, transmitted in a form so ancient that even the most advanced systems of the Galactic Council had trouble deciphering it. The message was short, cryptic, and simple. Run. Commander Lyra of the Galactic Council stood in the war room, staring at the flickering hologram of the transmission. Her fingers hovered over the controls as she tried to make sense of the eerie, single-word message. The humans had been tortured, experimented on, and subjugated for so long. Why would they send such a thing? What did it mean? And why now? The room was silent except for the low hum of the machinery, and the chill of suspicion settled over her. Lyra, always so confident in the Council's absolute superiority, began to doubt herself for the first time. There was something in the transmission that didn't add up. She was about to dismiss the message when the door opened, and Captain Dorian walked in, his presence almost as commanding as the technology surrounding them. He was one of the few human soldiers who had survived the grueling experiments, his body and mind altered in ways that even he didn't fully understand. The humans were tougher than anyone had given them credit for, and Dorian was proof of that. "Commander," he said, his voice steady but carrying an underlying sense of urgency. "We need to talk." Lyra looked at him, feeling a mix of apprehension and curiosity. She'd overseen the suffering of hundreds of his comrades, but Dorian was different. There was a fire in his eyes that had never gone out. His presence was unsettling, as if he knew something she didn't. "About what?" she asked, keeping her tone sharp to maintain control. But the words felt hollow, as though she was trying to hold on to something that was slipping away. "I don't think you understand," Dorian said, walking toward the hologram. "That message, it's not from the humans. Not from any soldier, anyway. It's from Earth." Lyra furrowed her brow. "You're saying Earth sent us a message?" He nodded slowly. "Yes. And I don't think it's a warning. I think it's a promise." A chill ran down her spine. The weight of his words hung in the air, thick and foreboding. "Promise of what?" she asked, almost reluctant to hear the answer. "The end of the Council," Dorian said simply, but there was nothing simple about the way his words hit her. Lyra's mind raced. Earth, the home of humanity. A planet long since conquered and forgotten in the grand schemes of the Council. She had been taught that Earth was nothing more than a barren rock, a place of no consequence. The humans on their world had been wiped out centuries ago. Or so she thought. But this message, this promise. Lyra turned her gaze back to the message, and her mind began to race. What was Earth planning? Was this some final, desperate cry for help? Or was it something else entirely, something far more dangerous than they could ever imagine? Meanwhile, in a hidden chamber deep within the Council's base, the human soldiers were making their final preparations. The torture they had endured, the mental and physical agony, had forged them into something beyond what the Council had ever anticipated. They weren't just surviving, they were evolving. In the depths of their suffering, they had found something unbreakable inside of them. Something that, when unleashed, would change the fate of the galaxy. Dorian's voice cut through her thoughts. "We've been given a second chance. The soldiers, my brothers and sisters, are not the same as they were. They've adapted. They've been forged in fire, and we're about to show the galaxy what it means to underestimate humanity." Lyra's eyes widened as the reality of his words began to settle in. The humans were no longer the broken, tortured beings the Council had once thought them to be. They were something far more dangerous. They were a force that could no longer be controlled. Before she could respond, the room darkened, and a new transmission appeared, this time, from Earth itself. It was a live feed, and the figure on the screen was unmistakable. A human, standing tall and proud, with an expression of quiet strength. The message was clear, even without words. The figure on the screen raised their hand, and then, as if to confirm Dorian's warning, the words appeared in bold letters. Run. Lyra felt her heart race. This wasn't just a warning, it was a declaration. A challenge. The council had been played, and now, they would face the consequences of their actions. Dorian's face was grim, but there was a fire in his eyes. He turned to Lyra, a quiet determination in his gaze. We've already won, Commander. The war was never against the humans. It was against the council's arrogance. Lyra swallowed hard, the realization of the truth sinking in. The humans had always been underestimated, but now, they were the ones in control. The Galactic Council, for all its power, had made a fatal mistake. As the transmission ended, Lyra stood frozen in place, her mind racing. What was Earth planning? What was Dorian truly capable of? The silence between them was deafening. The fate of the galaxy now rested on a single question: would the Galactic Council run, or would they fight back? The silence in the war room felt suffocating. Lyra couldn't shake the sense that something monumental had just occurred. The Galactic Council was built on an unwavering belief in their superiority over every race they encountered, humanity included. They had enslaved, tortured, and experimented on humans for generations, breaking their spirits and claiming victory after victory. But this message, this simple command from Earth, had shattered that belief. Dorian's words echoed in her mind: the war was never against the humans. It was against the Council's arrogance. But what did that mean? How had the humans turned the tables? Lyra's fingers hovered over the hologram console, her thoughts a swirl of confusion and disbelief. Everything they had known about humanity, their history, their defeat, their extinction, was being questioned with each passing second. We need to prepare, Dorian said, his voice a steady calm in the face of the storm. The humans are about to show the galaxy something it's never seen before. He was right. For centuries, the humans had been seen as a broken, conquered race. But the brutal truth was that they had never been fully defeated. And now, they were rising from the ashes with a power the Galactic Council had never anticipated. Lyra knew this wasn't just about revenge or a final stand, the humans had something more. Something terrifying. Prepare for what? Lyra asked, her voice barely above a whisper. They're not even supposed to exist anymore. They should have died out centuries ago. Do you honestly believe the humans could ever be wiped out? Dorian's voice was sharp, almost mocking her disbelief. I've seen their resilience firsthand. Their spirit is unbreakable. They've been building something hidden, something we were too blind to notice. Lyra turned to face him, eyes narrowing. You speak as though you know what they've been doing all this time. What have you seen? What are they hiding? Dorian's lips curled into a small, knowing smile. It's not about hiding. It's about adaptation. They've been evolving. Surviving. And now they're preparing to unleash something the Council can't even fathom. Lyra frowned. The idea of humanity evolving beyond the Council's understanding was difficult to process. How had they done it? And why hadn't anyone noticed? The answer came when Lyra received a second transmission, a new message from Earth. This time, it wasn't just a simple word or cryptic symbol. This was a detailed transmission. The hologram flickered to life, showing an intricate diagram of what appeared to be some kind of weapon, an alien technology fused with human ingenuity. It was unlike anything Lyra had ever seen, a perfect combination of organic and mechanical, of human emotion and alien intellect. This is what they've been working on, Dorian explained, pointing at the display. A weapon of pure willpower. Not just a weapon that destroys, but one that can bend reality itself to the will of its user. Lyra's eyes widened in shock. That's impossible, she breathed. No weapon could do such a thing. You'd be surprised, Dorian replied. The humans have always had an uncanny ability to adapt and create, even from the most hopeless of situations. This weapon is not just technology. It's a force. It's the culmination of their years of suffering and resistance. The diagram shifted to show a series of human soldiers, like Dorian, connected to the weapon, their bodies fused with it in a symbiotic relationship. Their minds, once broken and battered, had been enhanced, their physical limitations erased. They were no longer just soldiers, they were living, breathing embodiments of the weapon itself. They had become the weapon. Lyra recoiled at the sight. The Council had always prided itself on its technological superiority, but this was something different. The humans had found a way to merge their greatest strength, willpower, with the most advanced technology in the galaxy. And now, they were about to use it. They're not just going to fight us, Dorian continued. They're going to make us feel every single moment of their torment. Every second of their suffering will be imprinted on us. The Galactic Council is going to experience what it's like to be truly broken, and when it happens, there will be no going back. Lyra's throat tightened. She had always believed that the humans were weak, that their spirit could be broken. But now, as she saw the sheer force of their will embodied in this weapon, she realized just how wrong she had been. Do you know how many humans are left? Lyra asked, her voice tight. How many of them have been trained in this weapon? Dorian hesitated before answering. I don't know the full extent, but what I do know is that every single one of them is ready. They've spent years, decades, perfecting this. And now, it's their turn. The realization hit Lyra like a physical blow. The humans weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for their place in the universe, and they had the power to force the Council to its knees. She looked at the diagram again, her thoughts racing. How had the humans managed to develop something so powerful without the Council noticing? Why had no one seen this coming? They've been preparing for this moment since the day they were first enslaved, Dorian said quietly, as if reading her thoughts. They knew that one day, the Council would push them too far. And when that day came, they would be ready. Lyra stood motionless, her mind reeling. Everything she had known about the humans was being torn apart before her eyes. The weapon they had created wasn't just a tool of war, it was a statement. It was their revenge. Their redemption. The Galactic Council had tortured them, broken them, and turned them into nothing more than subjects for experimentation. But now, humanity was standing tall once again, ready to take back what was theirs. They weren't going to run. They were coming for the Council. The time for preparation had ended. Across the galaxy, the Galactic Council's ships began to mobilize, their war machines rolling out of their sleek, metallic hangars, preparing for the confrontation they believed would end once and for all the resistance of humanity. The Council's generals were confident, too confident. They had crushed countless worlds, defeated species, and enslaved entire civilizations. But they had underestimated one simple truth, the human spirit. Back on Earth, the final phase of the human uprising was about to begin. Lyra had received word that the Council had dispatched its fleet to Earth's borders, a show of overwhelming force designed to intimidate and crush any remnants of humanity. What the Council didn't realize, however, was that the weapon was already operational. Humanity had not only hidden in the shadows, they had been training, improving, and preparing for this day with everything they had. Dorian stood beside Lyra, looking out at the war room's expansive holographic map, his expression grim. The map flickered, showing the massive armada approaching Earth's outer atmosphere. They're coming in full force. They think they can scare us, break us with their numbers. They're wrong. Lyra studied the map carefully. The Council's ships vastly outnumbered humanity's forces, but that didn't seem to faze Dorian. You seem calm. Do you truly believe the humans can hold their ground? Dorian nodded, his gaze unwavering. I've seen them fight. I've felt what they're capable of. This isn't just about firepower. It's about their will to survive. And they're stronger than they've ever been. In the days leading up to the confrontation, the humans had done everything to prepare the battlefield. With the help of the weapon, human soldiers had trained to synchronize their attacks with precision, like a single, unstoppable force. The weapon itself didn't just augment their physical strength, it tapped into their emotions, their deepest fears, their anger, their hopes, and their desires. It turned them into living catalysts of change, transforming them into a force unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. The first strike came at dawn. A council ship, colossal and imposing, descended from the heavens like a dark shadow, ready to unleash its destructive payload upon the unsuspecting cities of Earth. But humanity had anticipated this move. A single human ship, small and unassuming, rose from the planet's surface, cloaked in the shadows of its own stealth technology. The humans had learned how to fight smarter, not just harder. As the massive council ship moved into position, the human ship struck with precision, delivering a deadly blow to the council's flag-bearing vessel. A massive explosion sent shockwaves through space, and for the first time, the council fleet felt fear. Lyra watched in awe as the humans unleashed their might. The weapon was working. Each soldier, connected to the weapon, was amplifying the other's power. With each blow they struck, the war machines of the council began to falter. Lyra's heart raced. The tide of war was shifting, and the human will was proving to be stronger than the council's might. This is only the beginning, Dorian whispered. His voice had a calm intensity to it, but Lyra could sense the anxiety buried deep within him. They will keep coming. They'll throw everything they have at us. Lyra couldn't help but ask, what happens when the council realizes that brute force won't win this battle? They'll try something worse, Dorian said, his jaw tightening. But it won't matter. The humans are ready. They've seen too much, lost too much. The council's cruelty has made them stronger. As the first wave of council forces regrouped and prepared for counterattack, Lyra felt something stir within her, a mixture of hope and disbelief. Could humanity really do it? Could they really stand against the power of the entire Galactic Council? The answer came swiftly. The Council's retaliation was fierce, an overwhelming storm of ships, weapons, and technology designed to crush any resistance. But humanity's weapon had given them a unique advantage. It wasn't just about fighting back, it was about understanding their enemies, predicting their movements, and disrupting their strategies before they could even form. Human soldiers, each one connected to the weapon, didn't just attack from the outside, they infiltrated, they sabotaged, they worked from within. They had become something more than soldiers, they had become the ghosts in the machines, slipping through the cracks in the Council's defenses, striking from the inside. And then came the bombshell. A massive fleet of human ships emerged from the asteroid belt, a hidden force that the Council had never even suspected. The humans had been laying the groundwork for years, preparing in secret, waiting for the moment when the Council's forces would be stretched thin and vulnerable. They had never truly been beaten, they had just been biding their time. Now, they were fighting back. And they were winning. The Galactic Council was starting to see that humanity had something they had never anticipated, a weapon forged not from technology, but from sheer willpower. And this weapon wasn't just about strength. It was about unity, about survival, about the emotional drive to protect everything they held dear. With every victory, the Council's arrogance began to crumble. Lyra could see it in their faces as they tried to regroup. They had underestimated the human spirit, and now it was too late. But Dorian's gaze remained focused on the horizon. This is just the beginning. The humans have won a battle, but the war is far from over. Lyra's mind raced. How much longer could the Council withstand this kind of assault? And what would happen when the full force of humanity's weapon was unleashed? The tension was building to a boiling point, and the story was far from over. The battle raged on, and the tides of war began to shift with every passing moment. As the humans gained ground against the Galactic Council, their unity and resolve only grew stronger. But not all was as it seemed. Even in the midst of their victory, shadows loomed over humanity's bright future. An unexpected twist was coming, one that would push their resolve to its breaking point. In a hidden command center beneath the surface of Earth, Lyra sat hunched over a digital interface, eyes narrowed in deep concentration. She had just received a communication from the Council, one that sent a chill down her spine. It wasn't a threat, nor a declaration of surrender. It was something more insidious. A message from the highest ranks of the Council, an offer for peace. Lyra looked at Dorian, who stood across from her, his face unreadable. She could see the uncertainty in his eyes. The humans had fought so hard for this moment, had endured unimaginable suffering. Now, they were being offered peace, but at a price. "It's a trap," Dorian said, his voice low and filled with distrust. "They know they can't defeat us, so they're trying to divide us." Lyra's fingers hovered above the screen. The Council's message was enticing: end the bloodshed. Join the Galactic Council as equals, and we will grant you power beyond your wildest imagination. The war ends now, but only if you abandon your human rebellion. It was the kind of offer that could destroy everything humanity had fought for, the promise of peace, but only if they surrendered their freedom. They would be pawns in a galactic empire that had shown them nothing but cruelty. "We can't trust them," Lyra said, her voice hardening. "But we need to know why they're making this offer now. It's not just about saving face, it's about something else." The deeper question gnawed at her. Why now? Why had the Council, at the height of their power, decided to offer peace? It didn't make sense. As the days passed, the pressure mounted. The world's leaders were divided. Some argued that this was humanity's chance to end the war, to preserve what they had left. But others, like Dorian, knew the cost of surrender. The humans had fought not just for their survival, but for their freedom, for their right to determine their own destiny. They couldn't just hand that over, no matter the cost. Yet, in the midst of the chaos, an unexpected ally came forward. A figure from humanity's darkest past, a Council defector who had turned against their own people years ago, came to Earth with a warning. She was a former high-ranking officer of the Galactic Council, someone who had once been a part of the very system that had caused so much pain to humanity. Her name was Alara, and she had witnessed the atrocities firsthand. She spoke of the truth behind the Council's peace offer. The Council, she explained, was not just seeking peace, they were desperate. Their empire was crumbling, their resources stretched thin, and their power was faltering. They had never expected humanity to rise up the way they had. They thought they had broken them, crushed their will. But humanity had surprised them. "The Council is afraid," Alara said, her voice filled with urgency. "They're offering peace because they're afraid of what will happen if you keep fighting. They've never faced an enemy like you. You've become a symbol of hope for other worlds. If you win, others will follow. They'll rise up, too." Lyra exchanged a look with Dorian. They had suspected as much, that the Council was on the brink of collapse. But hearing it from Alara brought everything into sharp focus. "They want you to join them so they can control you," Alara continued. "But they fear you. Fear what humanity is becoming. You are no longer the underdogs. You're a force to be reckoned with." The revelation hit Lyra like a tidal wave. The Council wasn't just trying to survive, they were trying to protect their empire, and in doing so, they were showing their true weakness. Humanity was no longer the prey. They had become the hunters. But despite this new clarity, the question remained, could they trust Alara? Could they trust any former member of the Council, even one who claimed to have defected? Dorian wasn't convinced, but Lyra knew that they had no choice but to take the risk. "Elara, what do you want from us?" Lyra asked, her voice steady but filled with suspicion. "I want nothing but to see the council fall," Elara replied. "I've lost everything to them, my family, my friends, my home. I want to see them crumble beneath the weight of their own arrogance." Lyra nodded slowly, her mind racing. This was their chance to end the war once and for all, but it would come at a cost. They had to trust Elara, and they had to be willing to risk everything for the chance of victory. The plan was set in motion. They would take the fight to the heart of the Galactic Council, to their very capital. There, they would strike decisively, cutting off the head of the snake. But as they prepared to launch the final assault, another bombshell dropped. Lyra was summoned to a private meeting with Dorian, where they were briefed on a new development. A vast fleet of council reinforcements was heading straight for Earth, far larger than anything they had encountered before. The council's desperation was clear now. They would stop at nothing to eliminate humanity's threat. "We're outnumbered," Dorian said grimly. "This is it. This is the final push." But Lyra's voice was calm, almost serene. "Then we fight. We fight to the very end. No matter the cost." And so, the final battle began. The days leading up to the final assault were filled with tension, fear, and anticipation. Every person on Earth, from the youngest soldier to the oldest strategist, knew that the coming battle would be the last. It was humanity's ultimate test: win, and they would reshape the galaxy. Lose, and they would be consumed by the very empire that had tried to crush them. Lyra stood in the command center, staring at the holographic map before her. The Earth fleet had mobilized, but the Council's reinforcements, a massive fleet larger than anything they had encountered, were headed straight for their homeworld. The odds were stacked against them, but there was no turning back now. Dorian walked up beside her, his expression hardened with determination. "We've trained for this moment our entire lives. The Council might have the numbers, but they don't have what we have: the will to fight. The will to survive." Lyra turned her head slightly to look at him. "But we're outmatched. Their fleet is huge, and their firepower is unprecedented. We'll have to be smarter. We'll need a plan that goes beyond just brute force." The last few days had been a whirlwind of strategies, simulations, and decision-making. The pressure weighed heavily on Lyra's shoulders, but she knew that she had to remain strong. If she faltered, the entire resistance would crumble. She had seen too many leaders fall, and she couldn't afford to be another one of them. Her mind raced through the possibilities. The Galactic Council was vast, but it was also arrogant. They believed they were invincible, that their empire could never be overthrown. But that was their biggest flaw. They had underestimated humanity's resilience, their capacity for innovation, and their ability to fight for what they believed in. "We have a chance," Lyra said finally, her voice steady. "It won't be easy, but we have a chance to win this. We need to cut the head off the snake, target their command ship. Without it, their fleet will crumble." Dorian nodded, his face set in grim resolve. "I'll assemble a strike team. We'll infiltrate their lines, take down their flagship, and break their command. That's our window of opportunity." As the Earth fleet prepared to face the massive Council reinforcements, Lyra and Dorian's team made their final preparations. The mission was dangerous, perhaps even suicidal. But there was no other option. If they couldn't take down the Council's flagship, the war would drag on for years, and the cost would be unimaginable. The day of the assault arrived, and the Earth fleet launched into space. Thousands of ships, each one manned by the bravest humans the world had to offer, moved into position to face the overwhelming might of the Council. The battle would be fought in the stars, a fight for survival that would echo through the cosmos. Lyra stood on the bridge of the flagship, her hands gripping the console as she watched the battle unfold on the monitors. The Earth fleet fought valiantly, but the Council's forces were relentless. Massive explosions erupted in the distance as starships collided in a fiery dance of destruction. Every moment was critical. Then, Lyra's comms device buzzed. It was Dorian's voice, urgent and focused. "We're in. We're on our way to the flagship. Stay sharp, Lyra. We'll need you to keep the pressure on the Council's forces." Lyra's heart raced. This was the moment. The Earth fleet was holding the line, but the real battle was happening within the heart of the Council's forces, on the flagship itself. Minutes felt like hours as the team navigated through enemy lines, dodging laser blasts and maneuvering through wreckage. The Council's fleet was vast, but it was also disorganized, caught off guard by the sheer audacity of humanity's strike. "We're almost there," Dorian's voice crackled over the comms. "Brace yourself, Lyra. We're about to make history." Lyra's fingers hovered over the controls as she activated the final phase of their plan. The Earth fleet was closing in on the Council's command ship. The strike team, led by Dorian, was making its way through the flagship's defenses. But there was one last obstacle, a powerful shield that protected the heart of the ship. With a single command, Lyra deployed the weapon that would pierce through that shield, a prototype torpedo designed to disrupt the flagship's energy core. It was humanity's last resort, a weapon so powerful that it could change the course of the war in an instant. The torpedo flew through the void of space, its trajectory precise and true. As it hit the flagship's shield, the universe seemed to hold its breath. For a moment, there was nothing but silence, then a deafening explosion rocked the galaxy. The flagship's shield was shattered, and the torpedo made impact, sending shockwaves throughout the Council's fleet. On the bridge, Lyra felt the vibrations of the explosion through the floor. "It's done," she whispered, her voice filled with awe and disbelief. The Council's fleet began to fracture, their ship scattering in panic as the flagship's destruction signaled the fall of their command. But there was still one last battle to fight. The humans had done the impossible, they had struck the heart of the Galactic Council, but the final victory was still not guaranteed. The destruction of the Council's flagship sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. The Earth fleet had managed to shatter the heart of the Galactic Council's empire, but the war was far from over. The remaining Council ships, though disorganized, were still a formidable threat. Humanity had won the first round, but the final battle awaited. Lyra stood at the command center, looking at the chaos unfolding on the monitors. The Earth fleet had been battered, but they had held their ground. The remnants of the Council's forces, now leaderless and scattered, were retreating in disarray. Yet, Lyra knew that this was only a temporary victory. The Council would regroup and retaliate. They wouldn't give up so easily. "We've shaken them, but we need to finish this," Dorian said as he entered the command center, his voice calm but filled with urgency. Lyra nodded. The destruction of their flagship was just the beginning. "The Council will send reinforcements, and we have to be ready." Dorian glanced at the tactical map. The remaining Council forces were regrouping at a massive outpost on the edge of their territory, a stronghold that would be nearly impossible to breach. If Earth wanted to end this war, they would have to strike at the heart of the Council once again, but this time, the risks would be far greater. "The final battle will be on their turf," Dorian said, studying the map. "We can't fight this on their terms. We need to outsmart them, use everything we've learned about their weaknesses." Lyra thought for a moment, her mind racing. The Council had relied on their technological superiority, their sheer numbers, and their belief that humanity was too weak to stand up to them. But the humans had proven them wrong. They had fought with passion, ingenuity, and an unwavering will to survive. Now, they had to use that to their advantage. "We'll have to create a diversion," Lyra said, formulating a plan. "Our fleet will engage them directly, but we'll send a small, covert team to infiltrate their stronghold. We'll take out their command infrastructure, disable their weapon systems, and strike at their supply lines." Dorian raised an eyebrow. "A small team?" That's risky. But I like it. We'll need the best for this mission. Lyra's heart swelled with pride as she thought about the soldiers who had fought alongside her, who had believed in her even when things seemed hopeless. These were the people who had brought them to the edge of victory, and they weren't about to stop now. We have one shot at this, Lyra said, determination in her voice. We hit them hard, and we hit them fast. No hesitation. Once we take out their stronghold, we'll cripple their entire fleet. The rest of the council will crumble without their command. The plan was set in motion, and within hours, Earth's remaining fleet mobilized for the final confrontation. The diversion would be launched at dawn, with the covert strike team making their move under the cover of the chaos. The team would board enemy ships, disable the council's weapons, and destroy any supplies that could aid their forces. As Lyra looked out the window of the command center, she saw the stars flicker in the distance. It was almost surreal. This was the moment humanity had been fighting for, the end of a war that had threatened to wipe them out. But even in the face of victory, Lyra couldn't help but feel a tinge of fear. The stakes had never been higher, and failure was not an option. The Earth fleet advanced, firing at the retreating council ships in a final attempt to gain an advantage. The battle was fierce, and explosions lit up the void of space as ships collided in a deadly ballet. But this time, the council was disorganized. They were running, scattering, and losing their grip on the galaxy. Now! Lyra commanded, her voice cutting through the chaos. Strike team, go! The small team of elite soldiers, including Dorian, boarded their stealth ships and moved toward the council stronghold. They were the best of the best, trained for this very moment. As they closed in on their target, the tension was palpable. The stakes were higher than ever, and there would be no turning back. Inside the stronghold, alarms blared as the team infiltrated the facility. They moved swiftly, disabling security systems and cutting through the corridors with precision. The council's forces were scattered, and their defenses were weak without their leadership. It was the perfect opportunity for humanity to strike. With a final push, Dorian and his team reached the central command center. They planted explosives, disabled the last of the enemy's defenses, and watched as the stronghold began to implode. The shockwave rippled through the galaxy, signaling the beginning of the end for the Galactic Council. As the team made their way back to their ship, Dorian paused for a moment, looking out at the destruction they had left in their wake. The battle had been hard, but it was worth it. They had taken down the council's heart and soul. Now, nothing could stop them. But the victory didn't feel like a celebration. Instead, it felt like a deep, solemn acknowledgement of the sacrifices made. The cost had been high, but the result was worth every loss. Lyra watched from the command center, her heart swelling with pride. They had done it. The Galactic Council, once a symbol of invincibility, had fallen. The galaxy would never be the same again. The battlefield was silent. Smoke rose in curling tendrils over the ruins of what had once been the Galactic Council's most powerful stronghold. The air carried the weight of destruction, but beneath it, beneath the wreckage, the fallen, and the scorched ground, was something else. Hope. Dorian stood on the fractured remains of a council warship, surveying the aftermath of the final battle. His body ached, covered in scars both old and new. The war had been brutal, far beyond what any of them had anticipated. And yet, they had won. Humanity had won. The resistance had held their ground against insurmountable odds, their resilience proving stronger than the Council's cruelty. Even now, as the last remnants of the Council's forces fled into the stars, one truth became clear: the Galactic Council, once thought invincible, had been broken by the very species they had tried to destroy. Dorian turned to see Commander Lyra approaching. She was no longer clad in the pristine armor of the Council but in a simple, battle-worn uniform, one she had taken from a fallen resistance fighter. A silent acknowledgement of where her loyalties now lay. "We did it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. There was relief in her expression, but also grief. So many lives had been lost to get here. Dorian nodded, exhaling slowly. At a cost. The battlefield stretched out before them, a grim testament to that cost. Thousands of human soldiers had given their lives to secure this victory. The Council's forces had been relentless, their retaliation brutal. But they had underestimated one thing: humanity's ability to endure, to fight, to rise no matter how hard they were beaten down. It had been their undoing. The Earth's warning comes full circle. A sudden beeping interrupted the silence. Lyra glanced at the communicator in her hand. A transmission was coming through, one marked with the same encryption as the message that had started all of this. The warning from Earth. She quickly patched it through. A holographic figure appeared before them, clad in the indistinct shadows of a concealed identity. The unknown messenger. "You have done well," the voice said, distorted yet unmistakably human. "The Council has fallen. The war is over." Dorian narrowed his eyes. "Who are you?" The figure hesitated before answering. "We are the ones who ensured you would never be truly broken." The Earth's warning was not just a plea, it was a promise. Humanity has always known this day would come. And we made sure that when it did, you would be ready. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. "You knew? You planned this?" The figure nodded. "Humanity's history is one of survival against impossible odds. We have been hunted, enslaved, and tested beyond our limits. But every time, we adapted. The Council thought their experiments were breaking you." A pause. "They were making you stronger." Dorian clenched his fists, memories of the torturous trials flashing through his mind. The suffering. The agony. The losses. And yet, standing here now, he realized the truth. They had emerged not as victims, but as victors. The price of victory. Lyra looked at the scattered remains of the Council's fleet, her expression somber. "And now?" she asked. "What happens to the galaxy?" The messenger's voice was resolute. "Now, it is humanity's turn to decide." Dorian inhaled sharply. The weight of those words settled over him. The war had been about survival, but the future? That would require something more. The humans who had fought in the resistance were no longer just soldiers, they were symbols of something greater. They had proven that no amount of oppression could extinguish the human spirit. Now, they had to build something new. Something better. He turned to his fellow survivors, seeing the same realization in their eyes. They had fought for freedom. Now, they had to protect it. A final lesson. As the sun rose over the smoldering ruins of the battlefield, Dorian spoke, his voice carrying over the weary but victorious crowd. "They tried to break us," he said. "They thought pain would shatter our will. They believed torture would erase our spirit." He paused, looking at the faces of those who had fought beside him, who had suffered yet endured. They were wrong. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. "They feared our strength," he continued. "Not just our physical power, but our resilience. Our refusal to surrender. That is why we stand here today." Lyra stepped forward, her gaze scanning the soldiers before her. "The galaxy will never forget what happened here," she said. "And neither will we." Dorian nodded. "We are human. And that is something they will never again underestimate." The message was clear. The war had ended, but the fight for humanity's place in the galaxy was only beginning. And this time, they would not fight alone. As the sun climbed higher, illuminating the scars of war and the hope of a new beginning, one thing became certain: humanity had earned its place among the stars. And no force in the galaxy would ever take it away again.